Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Great to see you on Newsmaker Saturday. Pleased to have the 23rd governor of the great state of Arizona, Doug Ducey, as our guest on Newsmaker Saturday. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me, John.
Welcome
Good
back.
to be back.
There's a lot going on.
Yes.
Let me start with number one. Sanctuary cities in Arizona. You said in the state of the state that we're not going to bring bad ideas from California here and have sanctuary cities. There was an effort to try to pass something to put that, codify it into the state constitution. It got dropped in the 11th hour. Why?
Well, first, I want you to know there are no sanctuary cities in Arizona, and they are illegal. We fought this fight in November in Tucson. There was an initiative on the city ballot, and it was defeated by Democrats and Republicans
70% defeated
alike. Yes. So we're going to take that victory. It's not legal in Arizona, and if anyone wants to bring it forward, we'll be certain to knock it down.
So you would litigate it rather than try to put it in the state constitution?
We think that's the better way to handle it.
When you talked about it, though, it sounded like you were deadly serious about this, that maybe it was a legacy thing, that you were going to try to get in there and say, hey, if political winds change, this will remain.
I am deadly serious about it. On my watch, there won't be any sanctuary cities in Arizona.
Why was it dropped in the end? Was it worry about blowback and maybe that it might harm this economic engine we've got cooking right now?
What we didn't want to do was make perfect the enemy of very good. So we think we're in a good spot right now. We think we're in a position to defend on any of these bad ideas. And there are several that we're going to be dealing with in this election cycle. This was one we could count as a victory.
Let's talk about coronavirus for a minute. There are so many unknowns. Let me give you something from the CDC. We hear a lot of media coverage. I think some of it's been irresponsible, frankly. Here's what the CDC says as of Thursday afternoon. At this time, the virus is not currently spreading in the community of the United States. That's a pretty strong statement from the CDC.
You may be the only person in the national media to report that line.
I'm wondering if we're going down the SARS road where everything's hysteria.
I sure hope we are, because that would mean there's not much here. We did this with SARS. We did it with MERS. We did it with Ebola.
Yes.
So I think as someone who's in charge of public health and safety, we want to be prepared for the worst. But yes, right now this is a lot of alarmism, and there are issues going on internationally. We see what's going on in China, what's going on in Italy, and we do know there's been transmission, but in Arizona, that transmission has been negative.
I know you're not an epidemiologist. I'm not either, but you would expect, this has been going on now a few months. Would you not expect the spread rate to be even greater? Now, I understand the cases have gone down in China. You would think if this were a virulent kind of thing, you'd see already an explosion.
Well, the first thing is I believe you want to be vigilant, because when there's a potential pandemic, you really don't know what could happen next. And this is spread, at least according to the governors were all back in Washington, and we were actually briefed by the head of the CDC, the head of the National Institute of Health, and Homeland Security. And they believe the transmission is like flu-like virus symptoms.
Easy to catch or not?
Well, easy to catch, if just like with the flu, if I were to sneeze in here, if I were to not wash my hands. These are the simple fundamentals to slow down transmission. So we've seen thousands of cases in China. That hasn't been the case in the United States. And in Arizona, one case, and it's resulted in a negative result, meaning that it hasn't spread.
Not fatal, or
yes.
It hasn't spread. Okay, so what is the state actually doing right now to prepare for this?
So the state has set up a health emergency center, which means we're working 7 days a week, coordinating with federal authorities, the Centers for Disease Control, and the National Institute of Health. If people have questions, they can go to azhealth.gov. That's specific Arizona information. And then you mentioned CDC, Centers for Disease Control. That's cdc.gov. They've done a great job of updating every day. I'm briefed every day on what's happening in Arizona.
You're spending a fair amount of time on it.
Well, it's something we have to focus on at the beginning of every day and the close of business.
You've seen what's happened. It's roiled the markets. And you were the state treasurer.
Yes.
People may not know, the state of Arizona, you did this. I mean, it's like a trading desk. It's like a trading floor. At the treasurer's office, we're constantly investing in different instruments to enhance what we're bringing in revenue-wise. How does something like this happening in the markets affect our revenue stream and what's going into the general fund?
It won't affect our revenue stream in the short term at all. Of course, the markets have been so positive and robust. We're at an all-time record high in the Permanent Land Endowment Trust Fund. Now, it's taken a heck of a hit in the last 4 or 5 days. I think those markets are down, 15% in total. But over the course of time, they're still 15% down from record highs. So that's additional dollars that goes into K-12 education, our universities, and other things that are mandated by the Constitution.
If you're in the Treasurer's office right now, is it a buying opportunity? Are you buying stuff up in positions?
Main Street investing is different than Wall Street investing. I think that market timers and people that want to take advantage and be opportunistic, well, they can take that risk. But if you're in charge of public dollars, your goal is to not lose dollars, while at the same time you want to make sure there's steady investment so you can meet the needs of the state.
We're flush with cash, though, right?
We're in a very strong cash position. We've got $1 billion surplus in our general fund.
Everybody, when that happens, Governor, historically everybody says we've got $1 billion, let's spend it.
Well, we're not going to spend it. We're not going on a spending spree. We're going to make targeted investments in K-12 education, in public safety, in corrections. We've had our credit rating upgraded twice.
You just did my segue, by the way. Go ahead. Okay.
We've had it upgraded twice in the last 5 years.
That means we can borrow money for cheaper.
So all good news on the financial front, but what you also want to do is be cautious. There will, at some point, be a true downturn, a recession. It doesn't look like it's going to happen this year, but it's inevitable. It will happen at one point. So you want to be responsible. And when there is a downturn, it will be different. Our economy's been diversified. We have more manufacturing jobs in Arizona today than we do construction jobs in a booming housing and real estate market.
Do you ever worry that we're growing too much, too fast?
It's better than the alternative. I believe that we are growing in a healthy way, and you want it to be responsible. Because we have dollars that we can invest, money that we're putting into infrastructure, we're building roads and bridges, we're widening I-17, we're expanding I-10. These are all positive things, and that's the public investment part of growth, and we're keeping up with it.
Now, no doubt, when times are good, you can do some things that you couldn't do before. One of them was you closed in January. You promised to close, and we'll show tape number 2, the Arizona State Prison at Florence. Why did you make that move?
Well, our first thought is always around public safety, but we thought we could be more efficient in our Department of Corrections. We've had some problems that we need to solve in corrections. We have a new director. I'm very confident that David Shin will be able to address that.
Was this his idea?
Well, we sat down together and we looked at the entire system. We did an overview and we said, how can we do this more effectively and efficiently? How can we do it in a way that correctional officers are safe inside prisons and that prisoners are safe? And we found that we had the opportunity, especially with a focus on reducing recidivism and our second chance programs, that we could shut one of these prisons. It's going to save the taxpayers $274 million over the next 3 years, and improve public safety.
But you did have 15 counties saying their jails would not be able to accommodate these state inmates. They feel that they can't handle it. What do we do? Well,
our state prisons can handle these inmates, but we are going to be working with county sheriffs, county facilities, if they're open-minded to it. But we'll be able to handle this at the state level.
Why Florence? Just because it's 100 years old? It was too old to fix it up?
Think of Shawshank Redemption with a lot of neglect. During the downturn, there were not dollars available for infrastructure, and many of the issues you've seen that we have to fix were a result of what happened during the downturn. That's why we're spending a bit more, we're investing, but we're also saving, so we don't go through that next time. But this was a prison that it was easier to shut down than to do the repairs. 108 years old.
This is the businessman in you, CEO of Cold Stone Creamery, coming out. You look at it kind of like a balance sheet.
Well, you want to make a balanced decision as well. I mean, sometimes it does require investment. It does require more spending. But when we can do something and work with the community so that we can take this off the balance sheet of the state and improve the results and outcomes for the citizens and the people inside the system, that's something we wanted to do.
Let's talk about wages in Arizona. They are on the rise. You talked about earlier we're in a period of great economic expansion here. Wages are moving. People say only the wealthy are getting the effect of this. You say?
Well, I think that's some on the left that are saying that. These wage increases are across the board. Arizona is the number 2 or 3 state in the nation in terms of improvement in per capita income. That means growth in personal paycheck. That's while we're growing in population as well. We're the number 1 inbound state in the country, and we lifted more people out of poverty in the state of Arizona than any other state in the U.S.
Is the big influx from California now more than the Midwest? Is that where we're getting our population growth?
Well, I think we're getting a lot of Californians that are coming here. I think a lot of the policies in California. I talked in my State of the State about the Arizona way, that we do things a little bit differently here. Lower taxes, lighter regulation.
Do you worry that that could change with an influx of Californians with maybe a different political sensibility?
Oh, no, I think that we're going to stay reliably common sense conservative. If you look at 2014 to 2018, I was actually able to take my message to market twice and win with a larger margin with hundreds of thousands of new Arizonans that have come to our state. And the only state that has more net in-migration from California than Arizona is Texas. And Texas has done a lot of things well as well. You leave California for a reason, John.
Last week, right down from the state capitol, we'll roll tape number 2A, please. This is shocking. I assume you've seen this homeless encampment. You take a left turn off of Washington, and you are in third world misery down there. Do you have any sense of how we deal with this? I mean, even Gavin Newsom in California, as the governor, has gotten caught up in what to do in cities, San Francisco, L.A. What do we do about this?
Well, there's good policy and there's bad policy to deal with this. This is something in Arizona we've been rather good at, looking backwards. I remember I saw former Mayor Greg Stanton actually be able to present publicly and say that we had solved chronic homelessness in Arizona.
For veterans.
For veterans. With the improving economy, it does have consequences that are unintended. Rising rents displace people. We also have some issues in terms of population growth, mental health issues, and addiction. So this is something the state wants to be helpful on. It's something we also need local leadership, and it doesn't just all fall on Phoenix. It's the greater metropolitan area, so it's Phoenix and the entire region and cities, but it's something we have to deal with.
Part of that population obviously has mental illness. You mentioned it. You've called for health insurers to step up mental health care, saying in January that companies should be covering mental health just like they cover an annual physical.
Mental health is part of the total health equation, and what we're seeing not only on our streets, we see this also inside our schools, in our veterans communities, social and emotional disconnection, depression, etc. These are things that can be solved through some mental health therapies. We want to remove the stigma around this, and we want insurance companies to handle mental health just like they would an annual physical.
Did we make a mistake in deinstitutionalizing people? Are there people... I watched this on the streets of Phoenix when we went into that homeless encampment. There are people definitely who are chronically mentally ill. Are we being compassionate, letting them roam the streets, frankly, like wild animals? Could there be a case made that we need to rethink institutionalization?
Well, I think we can
get them help.
We can do better than what we're seeing right now. I think sometimes the overcorrection on public policy can swing too far. We did have people that were being institutionalized against their will. I think this is in the early 1980s when the pendulum swang the other way. We saw a rise in homelessness. We were able to deal with several waves of it. So I think that there's a balance here, and it's not necessarily the institutionalizing of all of those folks, but there probably are some that need some help, and we should have beds available for them.
And they may not recognize they need help.
Yes,
yeah.
And that's where you want to work with family members.
We're going to take a break here on Newsmaker Saturday. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the firefighters in the effort to try to cover them on all cancers related to jobs, occupational cancer, they call it, and also your visit to the White House with your son. And, oh, we've got so much more. You just stand by.
You got it.
Back in a second on Newsmaker Saturday. Back on Newsmaker Saturday with Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, elected in, what was it,
2018, 2014 and 2018.
2014 and 2018, yes. and you're termed out. You don't have to worry about re-election.
I have 3 legislative sessions left, and we're going to get the most out of each one of them.
You're still enjoying it?
Oh, very much so.
Okay, let's talk about occupational cancer among firefighters. There's a proposal right now at the legislature to try to help firefighters with occupational cancer in their bills. There's no question that statistically firefighters face a 9% increase above the general population in cancer diagnosis, 14% increase in cancer-related deaths when compared to the general population. But how do you then go from that recognition, to saying that if a firefighter gets cancer, it's absolutely job-related? How do you possibly extrapolate that? Somebody gets skin cancer, a firefighter in Arizona. We're all exposed to the sun, on the job, off the job. How do you draw that conclusion?
Well, first, I don't know that that's what the bill says. This is a bill that was signed last session or the session before to protect our firefighters. I think we want to see our first responders and our firefighters have proper insurance and proper medical care. Some were falling through the cracks. Some were victims of bad actors in the insurance industry, where they were actually getting pushback on cancer diagnosis.
Legitimate.
And so this was an effort to fix that. There are still some loopholes where there isn't proper protection. So I want to see a bill that puts a firefighter in a position where they have insurance. If it's a workman comp type situation, that is there as well before I want to sign it. But the idea is it's got to be good public policy, and it's got to be fiscally responsible, and we've got to have an idea of what it's going to cost the public treasury.
Well, the taxpayers could be on the hook for this, right?
Well, taxpayers should be on the hook for this because these are our public servants. Right. I mean, this is police, fire,
but in terms of the pension, the funds that help these folks, you could potentially really, I won't say bankrupt it, but they're already teetering, many of them.
Well, we want to make certain that it's responsible policy, that it's reasonable and responsible policy. That's what I've called for, and that's typically when you have a legislative body and, you know, the to and fro in terms of the debate. That's what you would expect. If it's a bad idea, it's not going to get to the governor's desk. I leave that to the legislature, and when bad ideas do land on my desk, they're vetoed. Now, in this situation, I think that there is a way through public policy to solve these loophole issues and protect the Treasury and the firefighter.
Tape number 3. The president here last week, you met him out on the tarmac at Sky Harbor, and then you were called up on stage during the rally. You were, I would say, lukewarm about this guy early on, as a lot of Republicans were. They were leery. They didn't know who this guy really was. As time has gone on, are you on the Trump train?
Well, listen, I've got an excellent relationship with the president. I've been very supportive of his policies. I hear these reviews in the media of where I was. I stayed out of the primary in 2016. I had just been elected. I was sworn in 2015. I was an incoming freshman.
But you were a McCain guy. Well, and McCain and Trump have always had this, and it still continues.
Well,
with John
I would say I'm still a McCain guy, and I am supportive of President Donald Trump. I think these policies I've talked about, what he's done for border security, what he's done for the cause of life, the regulations that he's reduced, the tax cuts that are here, the federal judges that have been confirmed, the 2 new Supreme Court people. This is good policy.
You think he's in part to credit for Arizona's economy right now?
Well, of course. When the national economy is growing, it really helps Arizona's economy. When the national economy is failing, it hurts Arizona's economy more so. So I'm proud of what we've been able to do here at the state level, and I think we've been able to also ride this wave that has not even come close to cresting yet in Arizona.
Are you more predisposed to liking him, admiring him than you were 4 years ago?
Well, I like these policies. Now, personally, I've gotten to know him, and he's very likable. So, yes, you get to know someone. You have a relationship with him.
Would you work for him at some point?
Well, listen, I've got 3 years left here, and I'm going to complete my term.
I mean, there's been discussion that you could, you know, commerce. Who knows?
Well, I'm going to complete my term in Arizona. It runs through, I think, January 3rd, 2023. On that day, we can talk options.
You really are committed to that.
I'm
you
committed
would not leave early.
I'm not leaving
early. Even if
early.
the president calls you up and says, Governor, I need you.
Well, I'm not leaving early. I'm committed to this term. You're always going to talk to the president and what the situation is, but my focus is 100% on being the governor of Arizona for the next 1,024 days.
Now, you were at the White House. I've got to show the photos. This is tape 4. You and your son, and you're sitting right to the right of the First Lady.
Yes.
This was the governor's conference?
This is the...
and that's Joe, your son, to your right. There he is.
Yes. Very special.
Wow. He's
night.
how old?
Very special evening. He's 20 years old. In fact, on the day this airs, he'll be 21.
No kidding.
Yes.
Okay, so to bring your son there and to show him all this, that is one of the perks of the job, right?
Oh, it was very special. Every time you're able to visit the White House, it's you're honored to be there, and to be able to take my wife, my son Jack, and now my son Joe. I was able to take my mom last year, and God willing, I'll take my son Sam next year.
When you travel in that orbit, do you look around and go, I could do any of these jobs?
Well, that's not what I'm thinking when I'm there. That's not what I'm thinking.
Potomac fever, right?
Well, I don't have Potomac fever. It's great to be able to meet the people that are working there. There's a lot of good leaders back in Washington, D.C., and what I'm asking them is to send more of the dollars and programs back to Arizona.
We've got 3 minutes. I've got to ask you, you were kind of joined at the hip with Martha McSally. You appointed her to the spot in the U.S. Senate. Are you concerned that she can carry through and win re-election?
I believe Martha will win re-election. Now, the election cycle has just kicked off. Of course, I appointed Martha McSally. I think she's been a terrific United States Senator. I think her resume and record, an Air Force fighter pilot, the first female to lead a combat squadron, she's going to be a terrific person. Arizona's going to get to know her, and she's going to be able to unfurl that resume.
Her opponent is very strong. Even in her ad, she says he's an honorable guy.
Well, of course he is. Of course he is. And nothing's going to be easy in this election cycle, but I believe that Martha represents what Arizonans want done in Washington, D.C.
Okay, we've got about a minute left or so. I want to make sure, a couple of minutes, I want to make sure we get to education. This was you. This is tape number 6. This is you at the State of the State talking about education funding. We'll finish with this because it may be one of the biggest issues in the state.
The state of our state can only be strong with strong public schools. In total, we've pumped $4.5 billion in new investments in Arizona schools. And with our latest budget, that figure will rise to $6.6 billion. And we've done all of this without raising taxes.
Okay, so we've got that from you. And you have said we are back to basically pre-recession funding levels, right, in education. And now we've got this deal that probably will end up on the ballot if they get the signatures to tax the wealthy, anybody making over $250,000, to generate another $1 billion for education. My question to you is, if they get this done, has anybody said we're going to attach better outcomes, better graduation rates, better student retention, better test scores? Has anybody attached anything to this money?
None of that is in their initiative. The devil is always in the details. This bill is a bad idea. They released it actually before I gave the State of the State. So no matter what I said in that State of the State, and you heard me say that $4.5 billion in additional spending will rise to $6.6 billion. What they're saying is that's still not enough. We want another $1 billion. Well, John, we've got $1 billion in the general fund. If we need more spending, let's do it through the budget process. Let's not import these bad California baked ideas like doubling taxes on our highest producers and pushing them out of the state.
Would it hurt the economy?
Oh, it'll hurt the economy. It will hurt the state.
Do you think we'd get flight out of the state from the
Well, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. It's like hanging out a sign, look elsewhere than Arizona to live, work, and build a business. It's a bad idea. I'll be working against it, and we're getting more money to K-12 education, and we're going to complete the 20% teacher pay raise this year with more to follow.
Governor, great to see you.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Best to the family, and thanks for being with us on Newsmaker Saturday. We're back in a moment.